Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Ciarán and Peter are with myself and Rory to look back on round 2 in the football round robins. And I think at the start, Peter, we thought we were going to have a group of death. Everybody said that group with Derry, Galway, Dublin and Armagh is going to be absolute hell for leather. But I'm not sure anybody would have expected that this is what it would look like after 2 rounds. It was just a wild weekend. Derry kind of finally coming back into the mix and showing us that they can play football. But they've turned the lights on and made that group look absolutely box office.
Look, every group, there's something to play for. From a GAA point of view, to date, it's been a dream championship, and the quality of some of the games have been top drawer, no later than Galway and Derry on Sunday. The worst scenario when you come to the round robin and to the preliminaries and the quarterfinals is that the third round games, there's a lot of dead rubbers. That's not the case. I think 6 of the 8 games, the round 3 games, it's do or die, as in there's a team playing. If they lose, they could be out of the championship. And the other 2 games are top 2 teams playing. So there's a big prize in that. If you win, you're through to the quarterfinals. So every game, there's something at stake. And I think what you're going to have for the final round games, because there's a number of really intriguing ties, do or die, they're going to be at a neutral venue. I think a number of the venues are going to be packed to capacity. You think of Dublin and Mayo, you think of Dublin and Derry, Donegal and Mayo, Tyrone and Canavan. There's a lot of big ties there, and there'll be great atmospheres at all those venues. So it's really well set up. There's a lot to play for going into the final round.
Yeah, there is, Ciarán. And I think it's difficult because obviously we know the format is going to change next year. So you sort of stumbled on something that is working. I'm sure there's lots of people who've been giving out about it all along. But Peter is right. We are going to have Jeopardy, that famous word in football. We are going to have that for the final round of games.
We are, and I suppose, I suppose the flip side to Jacqui, we could be sitting here and we could have a few dead rubbers as well. So I think we have to be honest that the system is not flawless. You know, it is in some ways, but listen, let's not complain about it. We're getting a brilliant championship, and obviously a combination of the change to the rules, I think, combined with the fact teams, you know, even the week-on-week thing, I think, is hugely psychologically tough for teams. And we've seen, you know, teams have, you know, 1 week they're on point and they're really at the level of the game, and the other week they're dropping off. And I think that's led to a few results going the opposite way, and that has added to the excitement. So, you know, listen, for once, like, you know, I'm a long time retired at this point, but, you know, it's the first year where there is such anticipation around the football championship and the games that have to come over the next few weeks. That last day is going to be fantastic, and then even the knockouts from then on is going to be brilliant. So I think we have to embrace the positive side of it when we can. And, you know, the weekend was, you know, there was some brilliant games. Like I was obviously in Croke Park on Sunday, so I only got to look back on Galway and Derry, but like what a game that was. What a game. And probably it was the first time maybe we're seeing a shift change in terms of, you know, I know some teams still go with that kind of zonal 11 defence, but both teams really went man to man, and maybe tactically teams are looking at the benefits of really pushing out and putting the pressure on players out the field. Like Derry really turned up at the weekend, which we hadn't seen all year, and their high press and the intensity they brought to the game, it led to a brilliant spectacle right from the first minute. Like it was a pure championship battle, man to man, right throughout the field. It was an incredible game of football. And if that's the benchmark that we're going to probably see going forward, you know, and teams adapting as they move on, I think we're in for a great few weeks, you know.
Mm. The problem is, Rory, they still can't win a game for Derry.
No, Derry, I think, though, from a Derry perspective, I mentioned this before, like they were pining after Rory Gallagher for an awful long time, and they looked like a sort of a scalded cat. Certainly some of their performances, that someone it was like a child that their toy had been taken away from them. I think Sunday, was the first time we saw Derry just dispense with that and really go for it. And it was a real return to the sort of Derry that we saw under Gallagher and the sort of venom that they brought to the performance. It was a brilliant championship match. Physical. Fairness to the referee, might necessarily be Niall Cullen's biggest fan, but I thought he let a huge amount go. It was extremely physical. The game flowed. There was like everything was happening and everything happening all at once. And I thought Galway were actually quite lucky to get out of there with a draw, even though it took a sort of a last minute kick from Derry to level it. I mean, it was a sort of a fluky enough goal from a Galway perspective that put them in the driving seat. And it was a poxy enough one, kind of the ball broke loose. It was a shot really for a score. But I think it sets that game up unbelievably. So I'd be a little bit more circumspect around the format. I think people are conflating the quality of the games that we're seeing and the improvement that Gaelic football has undergone and the sheer, we've had so many brilliant championship matches even before we got to the round robin stages, and we're seeing that now, and I think it is largely to do with the rules. The rules have been a liberation, and I think people are sort of conflating that. Like, you still have a lot of anomalies with this particular format that I'm not convinced on. I mean, I know Kieran McGeeney is a big fan, and he's talking up the big thing about, they're going to, treat this game with Galway in the final round with the kind of respect it deserves. It's very hard to do that. I'm like, Kieran McGeeney and Armagh are trying to do something. No, I should have checked this before I've come on. I don't think an Ulster team has gone back to back with an All-Ireland title since possibly Cavan in the 40s. Are we going back that far?
Yeah, you would be.
Right. So,
sorry, Peter.
So like, this is such a rarity for an Ulster team to achieve this. They have 3 games over 5 weeks to cement their status here. And are you telling me that a dead rubber from his point of view against a team that will ultimately be scrambling to try and make a playoff match is going to be high on his list of priorities? Not convinced.
But he does have key players he's going to want to get back in though, Peter. And like, these are quality players. So it's not like he's going to put out the reserves like.
Well, there's a number of players coming back into the fold that are going to have to try and stake a claim for a starting place. And we're talking about their captain, Aidan Falker. We're talking about Niall Grimley. We're talking about Aaron McKay. Your quality footballers are having to really think here. There's players getting on there and they're doing the business. They're playing really well. So Oisin O'Neill has been excellent for them in the league start of the championship. His brother has come on and is actually going to come and remove rain. So there's serious competition from there. And so many of those players are coming back. You look at other teams, there's injuries. Kerry, for example, appear to be getting injuries at the wrong time and players are going to be missing game with Armagh. They're coming back. But just on Rory's point regarding the format, the current format we have, I agree with you, Rory, in that it's not perfect. The system we have is not perfect. But whenever you retain the provincial championships within an All-Ireland format,
fair.
What is the best system? Yeah. There's always going to be anomalies. There's always going to be an imbalance. So I'm struggling to see, is there a better option where we include the provincials and end up having meaningful games? And you look at the round robin games, look at Park Esler. You know, the intensity, how vocal the crowd were, the passion at the end of that game. You go to Navan, the games, there's been big turnouts. So many of the Donegal and Tyrone up in Balbafay packed. So the crowds are coming out to these games. And as Ciarán said about Dublin Galway and Derry, that was championship football, and the crowd from the start to finish were vocal. They were on the edge of their seats. So it is working, and I think we're just a bit premature. I know it's not perfect, But until we are certain that there's a better option, then I think we should be leaving it as it is.
Yeah.
And does the FRC brief to include formats?
But But the one thing, just one on that. So, and I think Peter's point is extremely well made there. But the only thing I would say, so I'm going to stick on my old Sunday game producer's hat for 1 second. There are 8 games now in the final round. Okay, so you're working your way through it and you're thinking, right, Group 1. Cavan haven't beaten Tyrone since World War I, right? So Tyrone will win that. So the only game that really matters in that group is Donegal Mayo. Group 2, done and dusted, Kerry home and host. Group 3, yes, Monaghan and Down is a massive game because it gives somebody passage directly to a quarter final. And then you obviously have Dublin and Derry, which is a major knockout game in Group 4. So I would probably look at it and say, you've 3 games of major substance. And I just think people are getting slightly carried away with, every game has meaning. Yeah, sure.
Cork, but it does, because they're going out.
Yeah, but Cork and Roscommon has meaning. But does anyone really care?
Well, the people who go out of the championship will. Same with Clare and Louth. That's a knockout game. One of them's in, one of them's out. Clare have never won a round robin game. If they were to beat Louth, it would be one of the biggest days in their football history. So I know what you're saying, but I do think for the counties involved, there's a massive amount of meaning in staying in the Sam Maguire Championship. So one of those teams who could be finding the exit door pretty quickly, Wheelo, is Galway, because you watch the way they are going, and I still think it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Armagh do go at this, and actually Galway find life very, very tough against Armagh. Now, there is still possible that they lose the game and they don't go out. But I think if you're in Port Joyce's situation, you're sitting there thinking, after the league, we were being touted as All-Ireland contenders, and now we're in a situation where we could be out, and we have not been playing to our potential. So what's wrong with Galway?
Yeah, you would expect, Jacqui, that because the context of the game means so much to Galway, just psychologically you would expect that they have to dig out a victory against Armagh. You'd still fancy them to do that. Because Armagh, okay, yes, they can put out strong players. As Peter said, a lot of guys coming back, but deep down when it comes to the crunch of Galway have to be at the intensity level, so you would expect them to be a couple of bars ahead of Armagh. But yeah, their performances is concerning. And I think Galway up to last year were quite rigid in terms of their structure, the way they played. They played a slow game. They were very good in possession. They dropped guys in on the edge of the D. They had a kind of defensive plan. They were very good holding the ball going forward. They didn't give the ball away through turnovers. They always got shots off. And that's what kind of helped them last year, I think, progress in terms of that they were their control of the game was excellent. I think they're just struggling a bit with the new game in terms of when they now they're being forced to push out and play man to man. I think they also have a little bit of disadvantage around the kick out. I think Conor Leeson's not really comfortable with any kind of mid-range kickouts or even short kickouts. So everything goes long. So they're reliant on their midfield. Now they're very, very strong across the middle of the park. They can get massive momentum from the guys that they have there. Particularly even they absolutely control the Derry kick out in the last quarter. Cian Darcy came exploding into the game, and he's having a brilliant year for them. But I just think they're struggling with a couple of aspects of the game. They're struggling to find their structure in the new game a small bit. And I think it would be a little bit worrying that, Paul Joyce, he took off Killian McDade, he took off Paul Conroy, he took off Shane Walsh.
Took off Sam O'Neill after 20 minutes, who I thought was actually playing quite well, Wheelo.
Yeah, but so now you have to hand it to the guy, because Galway's last quarter was really good. Now, I know they got a fortuitous goal, absolutely. I thought Matthew Thompson played really well. He played a lot better coming out the field. He was kind of controlling a lot of the game in that second half. So I think, Jacqui, I think there's a couple of aspects of their game they're just struggling with. I wouldn't be ruling them out. I still think they have a hell of a lot of quality, and they have a lot of good players. They probably have to get Shane Walsh ticking a little bit better. They still have Comer to come back in there. We saw the ball he plucked out of the air, if they can keep him fit. But they're struggling in a couple of aspects of the game, just their structure and even on their own kick out.
Are they as good as they were last year, Peter?
No, they're not at the minute, I would say, but they have the potential to be every bit as good. And there's two ways at looking at the performance against Derry. They were flat. They struggled to get to the pitch of the game in terms of their intensity. Derry really well up for the game, motivated. And I think the word that Paddy Talley used in his post-match interview was that they were passive against Armagh, and they weren't meant. They didn't intend that to happen, and they said this was their last game in Celtic Park, possibly this year, and they were going to go for it. So they weren't going to be passive, and they took Galway on physically, and I think Galway struggled with that. Now, Kieran mentioned the names that were taken off. So Galway team playing poorly, key leaders taken off, and what's their response? They were brilliant in the last 10 or 15 minutes, and they could have easily thrown in the towel. So I'd say Pádraig Joyce has a lot to take out of it from that point of view. They have a chance to reset. There's no doubt in terms of physique and the size around the middle quarter. They have the players to dominate teams in terms of kickouts. And up front, if you've Comer, Finnerty and Walsh hit form, I don't care. They can tear anybody apart. So Matty Tierney, Thompson's playing brilliant football. So they still have the personnel, they still have the size, and there's no reason why they can't turn it around. And this game against Galway in previous years, coming into the third game in the group, Galway were already through, and they were faced with a predicament. Yeah. Do we really go for this, or do we play? And they were caught in two minds, it appeared, and they didn't recover from that. So I think now it's clear they have to win, and it's Armagh that have that predicament. But no, at the minute, obviously, they're not playing as well. They've had a flat spot, but they're more than capable of bouncing back and mixing it with the big boys.
Mm. Well, we'll see. The other game between Dublin and Derry looks really interesting, Rory, because as the lads say, Derry are back. Nice to see them firing and playing that kind of football. Still big question marks about the Dubs. I know they were missing Con at the weekend, but that's not all they were missing. It was just key leadership right down the middle. They looked like they were in difficulty at the weekend.
They were good, yeah, but like I got to watch this yesterday, and they were going all right the first 20 minutes. They're 6-3 up. They had a number of really like sort of bog standard chances from a Dublin perspective that you would assume they would take. I think was it O'Dell right in front of the posts and he kicks wide. Then they had another one that maybe hit the post from Cormac Costello, and I think one drop short possibly from McGuinness. And then all of a sudden Rory Grugan goes down the other end, 6-3, and he kicks this incredible 2-pointer, and all of a sudden just the whole momentum of the game shifted. So, like, I wouldn't be hugely beating up on Dublin just yet. The thing about them was, like, they didn't have a good day at the office in terms of finishing. They also got caught 3 times for the 3 up.
That's inexcusable.
No, it was a lot of shifting, players in, players out, subs in, subs off, and that can create a little bit of confusion around who's doing what. But at the same time, at this level, I mean, if you saw it at club level, you'd be very, very annoyed. So at senior intercounty level, for a team like Dublin to be caught 3 times in the space of 8 minutes just after half time and gift Armagh 3 scores, 3 of the handiest scores, and I think they were playing into the wind as well in that particular half. But you can't put it all on Con. Con isn't some sort of magic wand that's going to come back and fix all their problems for them. I think they have some job of work though now. I mean, if you look at the way the championship format is laid out, it's 5 knockout games for Dublin to win an All-Ireland. Can you see them doing that?
Well, that's the question, Wheelo. I'm just not sure. I don't know if I share Rory's optimism about how quickly they can turn it around, because there is a lot of holes to be plugged.
There is, I suppose, Jacqui, there's been an inconsistency all year. And of Sunday's game now. I was up on the hill, so my analysis comes
You were on the hill. Fair play.
Jesus, Wheelo. What is it like when you walk into the hill?
I'll tell you, it was very subdued on Sunday anyway, that's for sure. It never got going, but listen, it's good crack.
Wouldn't like to be the lad stand behind you.
I was at the back wall, Peter.
Right.
I was at the back wall. The wall was behind me.
Blair in
I was hiding
hand.
at the back.
Yeah.
I think, Jacqui, there's been an inconsistency there all year. Like Dublin have had, some hot patches, and then, there's been portions of games where they've been overran and in a lot of trouble, and that's been a trend that's been there all year. I would be half glass full though in terms of, Sunday's performance in particular, that first half when they got at Armagh, they got at the full back line early doors, they had a lot of possession. They had the chances. I would take and the chances they had were easy enough chances, and Armagh kind of stood off them. They weren't shooting under pressure. They weren't kicking wides under pressure. They were kicking easy enough wides you'd expect them to get. So there was still more positives in the performance. There was, the second quarter, I think, they lost their way in the kick out. Armagh really took over, and they have a bit of an issue across the middle. Like you could see, Armagh had Murnan out in the middle, they had Rian O'Neill out in the middle, they had Creeley, they had Jardy O'Burns, they had four big men across the middle, and there's been a lot of responsibility put on Peadar Coffey O'Byrne, who's playing very well, but I don't think he has the same level kind of support across the middle, and Armagh were able to take over, and that's been a kind of trend. Like Dublin, everybody said against Galway, Dublin got the kickouts right, and they won a lot of hungry breaks against Galway. They were just on point, and they swept up a lot of breaks where they've struggled across that middle. Particularly they did in that second quarter. So I think, listen, do Dublin have the same depth? No. Are they the same team? No. But could they still be dangerous? Absolutely, and I still think when they perform, there's still a performance in them. They could still take a team out, but there's an unpredictability about them. Like the game against Derry is not a given. It's going to be out of Croke Park. If Derry bring that same level of intensity they brought the weekend, it will be a cracking game. So it's Dublin have plenty to work on. Rory touched on the technical fouls. They lost another one in midfield. I think, the midfield one cost them a 2-pointer in the first half. So if you're losing 4 or 5 points in that vein, you have to get that right as well. So Desi's plenty to work on, but I'd be more half glass full than anything to it. Do I see them winning the All-Ireland? No, but they can still be dangerous, particularly if they do get comeback. I know Con is such a difference to them. He is their leader, and in that, particularly that second half, like Dublin played around the arc. They played all their football around the arc looking for 2-pointers instead of maybe actually going at Armagh and asking them questions. And I thought they got tactically caught up in trying to chase the game probably too early, instead of maybe even trying to get a goal, get in behind that arc, get in and ask questions of the full back line. They didn't do that in the second half and became very predictable. So loads to work on, but still dangerous, I'd say.
Fair. Peter, what's your read on the Dubs?
Same as Ciarán, exact same. Basically, Desi will be taking the positives in that. There was questions asked. I never thought at any stage Dublin was going to win the game. I thought Armagh took their foot of the pedal, to be honest, in the second half. But at half time, for Dublin to win the game, they were going to have to start dominating kickouts. And in the second half, Cluxton got of 12 kickouts. He managed to get 11 in the way. They won 11 out of 12. They also won 7 of Armagh's kickouts, but they still didn't even win the half.
Yeah.
And Kieran's right about the 2-pointers. I think they had 9 efforts for 2-pointers, and they only scored 3 of them. You compare that to Armagh, they had 6 efforts and they scored 5. Now, they did all this without Con. Con as a focal point, as a leader up front. I don't think they're missing as many chances. The ball's going to be going through him. What would he not have added to that? So absolutely, Desi will take the positives out of it. But I think Armagh playing a wee bit below themselves, I think there's much more in them. And they proved in that 10 or 15 minute spell before half time that when they really go after you, they can hurt you, and they have the players to cause damage. But Absolutely. I wouldn't a fully fit Dublin team, everybody out in the pitch, they're capable of taking one of the big headers out of it for sure.
I would agree with you, Peter. The only underlying concern is that was there another gear in Armagh? That probably was.
Yeah.
I think there was.
And that's concern, possibly.
Yeah. Well, if that's the case, then Armagh are 2 steps ahead of some of the other contenders. And you wonder who's close to them, Peter, then. Where is the next? Because I think a lot of people maybe felt it could be a Donegal, but then you look at what's happened with them. And even in that group, I'm not sure, like Tyrone, like obviously put a massive step forward and people were thinking, oh, maybe it's Tyrone, but now I'm not sure either. So is there a contender that's coming out of that group?
Yeah, well, back to the point Rory made at the very start about this not being a great system. Take a look at the provincial winners and how this system has affected them very much to the negative. Galway has struggled. Donegal have lost a game. Louth haven't recovered from their provincial win. Some teams have had a 2-week break in between each game, time to analyse the opposition, time to recover. Other teams haven't. And so again, it adds to the imbalance. It favours some teams. But when you're talking about Armagh and comparing them to contenders, Armagh have played Donegal, they've played Tyrone, they've played a decent Derry team and then a strong Dublin team. So they've played against all the top. So we're witnessing them playing against the best teams. Kerry have the players to win an All-Ireland, but can you really judge them on the quality of the teams that they have played? So probably not. We still don't know what Kerry's really capable of. But if there's one team to put it up to Armagh, and we witnessed a few times when Dublin kicked early ball inside that they caused Armagh difficulty. When they come up against Kerry, guaranteed Kerry's going to be playing heads up football and looking to get the ball inside early as well. So look, bigger tests to come, and the way the game, the modern game has changed, and teams one Sunday you're going out thinking, wow, what a performance, dominating kickouts and all the rest. It can, from game to game, the drop and the quality of some of the performances has been staggering. And that's, Donegal, Tyrone, Mayo, even Kerry, there's inconsistencies, Galway. So that's what leaves the remaining games so fascinating. And there's a lot of competitive football to be played between now and the end of July.
Yeah, that's the thing though, Ciarán. The week-on-week scenario, the dip in performances, like we were doing Sunday game on Sunday night, and David Blake, one of our researchers, says there's been 16 games and only 5 teams have won at home. And I actually said, you better double check that. There's no way that could be correct. But it is, because of these inconsistencies that people are travelling on the road and putting so much into it and getting a massive win and then can't win their home games. It's been wild for that reason, because the exertions, I think, as Peter says, rightly so, when some of the big contenders are coming up against each other, it seems to be taking an awful lot out of them. Yeah,
I'd say the old sports psychologists are earning their few quid at the moment in terms of preparing team, Jacqui, because it is from a player's perspective, I think week on week can be kind of challenging. And, a lot of managers are probably going out thinking, is the team right? Are they at the right level? Are they going to bring the level of intensity we've talked about? And sometimes I think you see a trend that it just doesn't happen. I think like Tyrone's probably the perfect example, of a brilliant performance, the previous week. And then there was a passiveness and flatness about them. And they come up against a Mayo team who've been kicked around the place for 2 weeks and criticised and are fighting for their lives. And all of a sudden Mayo bring that level of intensity and just absolutely kind of steamrolled them and could have won the game by more. So I think it's massively challenging for teams with the amount of games week on week. I think they'll all welcome a bit of a breather now next weekend. It allows them to get ready for the last games, and that's another important point, that the team obviously that tops the group gets that little bit of a breather. If you're in second or third now, you're looking at 3 weeks in a row. You're straight from final group game to last 12 to quarter final. I think it's 3 weeks in a row.
Yep.
Right in saying
yeah,
that's correct.
So like that, when you look at the trends and you look at that, and I think the rules have fed into that to a certain degree as well, because teams can't play that controlling game. It's there's a little bit more chaos in terms of how the games unfold, and sometimes it comes down to the simple attitude and where the teams are at can be difference in winning and losing the game. So that 3-week period is going to be difficult for teams to go back to back to get through. So yeah, it's listen, it comes back again to the whole calendar. Is it too much on the individual players even to get to the pitch with each week?
I heard Jim McGuinness, Rory, saying after the game, he didn't want to go to Croke Park for Donegal Mayo, which is fair.
Yeah.
And the first thing he said was, our supporters have already had to travel up and down so much. They've already had an awful lot. Just give them a break. If they weren't to find themselves top and they have to be on the road again, the point you're making then is absolutely right, because suddenly you're asking those fans to go all over the country, 3 weeks on the bounce again. And so inter-county managers are feeling the pinch around this. And that's why the prize is so great for whoever, like in that group with everybody being on 2 points, throw a dart at it and tell me who's going to top the group. Who knows? But that's why the prize is actually so significant.
Yeah, it's a huge prize in that group. And that to me is the tie of the round. The tie of the final round is Donegal and Mayo, because we know Mayo have to win. Mayo have to win. Not look, a draw might be good enough for them, but if they lose, because Cavan have them on the head-to-head, to me that is, and it's set up so well. And look, they've met in All-Ireland finals in recent memory. They've met in quarter-finals. I think we haven't really spoken about Mayo at all. I thought they were magnificent on Saturday night. Managed to watch that game back last night. Now, it wasn't a particularly good game. I think Peter will obviously know better than any of us. It did look like there was a very strong wind, and it looked like it was a sort of a crosswind, which I think contributed to maybe the football quality being low. I mean, Tyrone had only 2 points on the board after half an hour, which is extraordinary given the modern game, and particularly with new rules, as Whelan mentioned. But I thought Aidan O'Shea, I know they gave man of the match to Paddy Durkin first game back, and absolutely, when you see such a leader coming back and play such a significant role, that's absolutely fair. But Aidan O'Shea was just, he was like a lion in that match. Like, catches the throw up. He was involved in winning the penalty. I don't know how many times he was fouled for frees that Ryan O'Donoghue tipped over. Put in a full 70 odd minute shift, which I don't like. I mean, for a man at his age, still producing it, I think maybe like Kevin kind of had a preference for him to sort of sit inside in the full forward line. Stephen has obviously decided to pull him further out the field. The argument now will start all over again. Where's he best employed? I think on Saturday we obviously saw, look, when he's out and involved in the play and linking it up, and he's a clever guy, he's so experienced now. I think he was a huge factor on Saturday night. Now, Tyrone were missing a few. They obviously, I don't know why Paddy Hampsey didn't start. I presume he was injured. He's obviously such an important player from a defensive point of view, from Tyrone's perspective. But to me, that was the result of the weekend. But should we be surprised with Mayo? They lose at home to Cavan. You're saying, right, they have to go up to Tyrone, who've just beaten the Ulster champions and one of the All-Ireland favourites. So there's no way Mayo are getting a result there. And what do? They're just, Mayo are, like, to be a Mayo supporter would be some roller coaster, I'd say.
Yeah, they've given us a lot of those days. They really have. Let's finish off, Peter, then on this group, and just I guess, as I know we're joking, kind of saying 2 points for everybody has to win, but who at the moment, as you're looking at that, one of them is going to exit the championship. Where's your head at on what you think is going to happen in those final round of games?
Yeah, so much depends on mentality and attitude, and Rory's quite right to single out Aidan O'Shea. I thought he didn't get the credit that he deserved after Saturday's game, because he was immense in so many aspects of the game. Stephen Rochford, I've never seen him as motivated or as pumped up for a game on the sideline.
Covered a lot of ground.
He did, and that that transferred to his players. And Tyrone played as if they would like to have won the game, and Mayo played as if they had to win the game. They needed it, and that was a difference in the two sides. If Tyrone play like that against Cavan, then they're in trouble. And the knock-on effect from a Cavan win, Donegal could be out of the championship after round 3 if Mayo beat them, and that'll be a cracker. And I wouldn't rule Mayo, out of that. Absolutely, that's a 50-50 game.
50-50?
Yeah.
It is. And the venue again, it could be Markievicz Park. I don't know. It could be Carrick on Shannon. It's going to be packed, and both grounds, the crowd are in on top of you. So that's going to be a special atmosphere. So it's very much up in the air. Donegal win and Tyrone win. Tyrone finish top. If Cavan win and Mayo win, then Cavan finish top and Donegal are out. So yeah,
it's a mad group, Whelan.
And it looks like Dublin Derry is heading. There's 2 options, which is Newry or Breffni Park. Now, either one of those will be magic, because they're 2 of my favourite grounds. They are fantastic venues because they're not that big, about 18,000-20,000. It will be wedged. I might even go to that one.
I would think, Jacqui, just the nature of the performances over the weekend, I do think we know the capabilities Tyrone have, and they will be. I'd say Malachy O'Rourke was disgusted with them at the weekend.
Yeah.
And I would think that Tyrone
you'll get a response.
They'll get it. You'll get a response out of Tyrone. There's too much quality there. And can Mayo get to the same levels as they did again? They're just so unpredictable. Donegal, you expect will be a little bit more consistent. So I'd be still leaning towards it. Donegal, Tyrone to come through, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Oh, lads, it's going to be some crack. It really is. We've still got plenty of time to look ahead to those ones, but we'll leave it there for today. To everybody who listens, don't forget to like and follow wherever you get your podcasts. And lads, thanks a million for being with us. We'll talk to you soon.
Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point.